Welcome to another episode of No Shelf Control, which is Portal's podcast where we examine the evolving landscape of retail media, performance marketing, and of course the intersection of digital commerce. Today I'm joined by Leroy from Kenvue, and Kenvue operates of course as a global scale across some of the most recognized consumer health and professional and personal care brands in the world. And with that scale, of course, comes complexity. So you operate in multiple markets, multiple retailers, and of course, there's a significant investment in media that comes with that territory. And Leroy's been leading that charge in terms of digital and performance initiatives within that environment. So Leroy, before we get into the detail, can you please share with us a little bit about you, your background, and your current role at Kenvue? And if you wouldn't mind outlining the disciplines that come with that role at Kenvue and what your core mandate is, that'd be really helpful.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for the warm intro. Thanks for having me on the show. I think I've got quite a broad background. I've really sat on all sides of the table, as they say. Started publisher side, working for one of the biggest publishers in South Africa. If you haven't guessed the accent, I'm sure you guessed it very quickly. From there, actually made my way to media vendor side, so a bit on the sales side of things. Did that for a little while, and then started the world of media strategy. So that's when I joined some of the bigger network agencies. I worked for one of them in WPP for a little while. I also spent some time at Publicis Zenith, and then in between did some freelancing and consulting work for some smaller independents and some direct clients. And then about 6 years ago, I decided to uproot my life and move to London. And at the same time, decided to pivot my career. So I actually went into creative strategy, which was a challenge. It was interesting. I think if I think back then, I probably thought I knew what creative strategy meant and what an insight was, but honestly, I didn't. Two very different worlds. I think media is very much about science. I think creative strategy is a little bit more about art.
Yeah.
Blending the two together was interesting. I learned a lot. Loved that. Spent some time working on eBay Global during the pandemic, which again was an interesting time. Business was seeing lots of growth at the time, so it was a great place to be. And then more recently, I've been working at Kenvue for about just over 4 years now. So kind of, I guess, went to the dark side and joined client. It's been great. I've been media manager at Kenvue. I've been leading all things kind of media measurement, data, offsite retail media also, so a little bit of everything. I guess if you wanted me to answer what my mandate would be really about making sure our media works hard, right, driving commercial outcomes, and then also on top of that, making sure we have the right data and measurement in place to prove those outcomes and obviously, optimize and scale from that. So, a little bit of everything.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you, Leroy, for that background. And also, you've got some exciting news for us about what's next for Leroy. Do you want to share that with the audience?
Exciting and busy and anxious and all the emotions all at once. I'm actually planning my next move. As if immigrating once wasn't enough, I'm deciding to do it again, and I'm making my way to Australia. You're going to ask me if it's the weather. I'm going to say yes, I'm chasing the sun.
Yeah. Hey, look,
we've had this conversation so many times.
I mean, I did the same thing a few years ago, made my way down to Melbourne, and I was definitely chasing better weather, and that's exactly what I got. So I fully back it. And is this for you, is this a short stint, or is this a pick up and move sticks for the longer term, do you think?
Yeah, definitely longer term. I think I'm planning to settle down there. Set my roots down. Bit more of the South African lifestyle,
yes.
weather.
Yeah.
It's going to be an interesting time. I don't know where I'll end up. I'm pretty flexible, as I said to you. I've kind of done a little bit of everything.
Yes.
So it's a good opportunity for me to take a step back and just see what drives my passion. What where do I want to sit? Do I want to stay with client? Do I want to go back to agency, vendor? I'm kind of exploring all options at the moment. So,
sure.
Maybe by the time this airs, I'll be, I don't know, sipping a beer on the beach somewhere, hopefully soaking up the sun. In saying that, I'm literally going from winter to winter. So,
but it's not like
not the best timing.
It's not like winters we have here.
Yeah, true.
But no, I can tell you from someone that's lived there firsthand. With your experience that you've got in multiple markets and the kind of clients and industries that you've worked in, you're going to step into a role down there, and the media industry is progressive. They're looking to try new things, and I think your skill set will be very welcome. It's not often I meet somebody that's worked in, you know, both my side of the fence, which is that media vendor, but has stepped foot into not just agency but also creative agency, and then working client side. I think that's a really incredible, well-rounded experience, which puts you perfectly positioned to have these types of conversations, which is sort of what's going on in the state of the industry today. So with that, let's jump in. And if you had to describe the current state of digital marketing in a large CPG organization in one sentence, what would it be?
I'll try to put it into one sentence.
You can go a bit over, that's fine.
I think right now, lots of uncertainty.
Yeah.
Budget pressures are continuing to rise. Measurement and data, is a challenge. Lots of, I guess, imperfect signals. So that's, that isn't something we've kind of fully solved yet. And I think the big buzzword right now is AI, right? Is continuing to, I think, increase that pressure. I think it's interestingly, in a weird way, it's made things easier in terms of it's leveled the playing field in terms of activation and some of the, I guess, more basic elements to some extent. But it's going to make it much harder for brands to stand out. So I think that's only going to push us to be a lot more intentional and focused with the things we do going forward. So yeah, I think there's I guess the negative and positive side of it. I think it's hard, and it's going to, I think, continue to be hard, but it's also going to force us to hopefully do some of the best work we've done moving forward.
And are you seeing AI kind of pop up in internal conversations more and more? Is it making its way into not just perhaps more of, I feel like there's a sort of visual stigma around AI is going to be used in sort of creative, but it has connotations throughout the entire organization. Is it popping up internally on a day-to-day basis now, would you say? Yeah,
absolutely. I think there's the kind of operational internal side of things, right? How we use it to do data analysis and correlation analysis right across our measurement, which it's been great. It's an amazing tool to do that. Synthesize insights, it's like the list is endless. I think we're slowly moving towards more, actually starting to operationalize some of that thinking and plugging into systems, right, to automate all of that. And I think that's when it becomes really interesting. And then, as you said, I think from a creative perspective, this is still the kind of planning piece, but then there's also the optimization and personalization piece, right? We can do, we can move at scale like we've never, been able to before. So I think the problem is because it's so democratized, right? We're all, everyone has access to this. So, the big question is how do we stand out? And I think the focus on creativity is going to be a big thing, which is quite exciting and interesting, particularly for brands, big CPGs like us. How do we drive awareness if AI is doing all of our creative and everyone's saying the same thing? How do we still stand out? How do we drive commercial outcome, because we still need to drive sales? I think I don't know, can make lots of predictions. I don't think any of us really know where it's going. We can kind of make some educated guesses, but I think it's an exciting and scary time at the same.
Do you think that we're going to get to a point where there is complete sort of AI personalization, where I think we've both worked in digital long enough that the dream is that we see different ads at different times based on when we're ready to buy, but that's very difficult to achieve and prove. Do you think that the end goal is to have sort of full AI personalization, that we see a creative that says, "Hey Leroy, here's a product we think you're interested in"? Do you think that's where it's headed?
I hope it's not calling me out by name. Maybe that's a bit too far. No, I mean, potentially. I think what's interesting is AI is going to have, AI already has so much access to so much more data than we've ever had, right? If you think about the signals we traditionally used on media, from browsing behavior, potentially some, interest behavior, etc., right?
Yeah.
If you think about what your AI system probably knows about you, the level is quite, quite scary. Everything from your emotional state to, even what you look like, how do you dress? What's your style? What's your, what kind of holidays are you planning? I mean, the list is endless, right? It knows more about you probably than maybe even about yourself. So you can imagine if you have access to that type of data, right? And that's like hyper personalization, I think, at a level we've never seen before. I guess what would be interesting is how that data gets centralized, because at the moment, we're still quite siloed. It's fragmented. Certain channels have a lot more data than others, but bringing that together is a challenge. So I'm interested to see where that goes. I've seen some partnership announcements of Criteo, partnering with ChatGPT. So those are interesting, things where we start to see retail signals coming into the mix. So you start overlaying that with all of these behavioral insights, and it's a treasure trove of data, right? So Yeah, very, very interesting.
It is, but with all of these shiny new toys comes the question mark of how do you operationalize it in a business like Kenvue. So I suppose from your perspective, what would you say the biggest structural challenges that you face when trying to combine digital and commerce in your teams at a global CPG business like Kenvue?
Yeah, I think I'll focus a bit more on, I guess, what my day-to-day looks like, and very much of a lot of my conversations around measurement, right? The biggest challenge we have, and it's been a challenge for a long time, I think we're getting better at is really data and measurement fragmentation.
Yep.
We have tons of data, right? I have lots of dashboards I can look at every day. They all sit in different places. They all tell me different things. They speak different languages.
Yep.
So trying to synthesize that all together to have some kind of directional guidance is difficult, to say the least. And again, I say, we are getting better. I don't think there's a silver bullet. I don't know if there ever will be. But the way I look at it is I try to layer as many data points, right? Macro measurement levels, micro measurement, and just trying to piece it all together to paint the clearest picture I can. It's not about acting on perfect information, right? It's just having enough to go by that at least puts you in the right direction. And then test, right? Does it work? Doesn't it work? Why didn't it work? Did it fail? That's fine. We learn something from that. This is not what we shouldn't do, etc. So yeah, that's a challenge. And then I guess being part of a big organization, I think sometimes pace is a bit of a challenge, right? Lots of red tape, lots of senior stakeholders to get on board. Particularly when you got all this data and measurement, right? And you looking at it and you sometimes go, what's the story I want to tell? And that's always, a challenge. So yeah, I think, some of the behavioral insights we get from Portal, for example, are invaluable. I think, we've got macro level measurement, we've got econometrics, mixed market modeling and incrementality testing, right? But these things take time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Even the best of the best, maybe best quarterly or, dipstick tests now and again. But, waiting 3 months to see results and then making a change is almost too late.
Yep.
So I think when you have access to some more granular data, right? How's our media converting on retailer sites? Is the creative working? Like those are changes we want to move fast on, right?
Yep.
And scale. So and those are things that we don't necessarily need buy-in from the senior leadership. It's easier to do on our side, right? And very quick to test, right? Like quick and dirty test. Does this creative perform any better? Do we see signal improvement or not, etc. So I think it's interesting, right? I just think, it's about bringing it all together, trying your best to, paint the clearest picture you can, and then, using the information that you have to hand.
No, I appreciate that, and that's exactly why we built the tool and platform that we're working together using. So it's great to see that it's being used in that way. I want to touch a little bit on sort of, you mentioned quick and dirty changes, which to me lend themselves more to sort of performance mindset.
Yeah.
And I want to talk a bit about internally. Do you see a big disconnect between perhaps historical CPG mindset of being very much brand focused and then what is being brought to the table now through new technologies? Not just the platform that we have built and operate, but other technologies allowing you to become more full funnel. I'm referring to retail media, which is obviously what the retailers are all building and offering, which is, again, a really important part of the mix. How do you navigate that challenge between previous brand focus to what's possible in performance internally? Yeah,
it's interesting. I think I've seen the pendulum swing on both ends. I think I remember a time when it was all about ROI, right? And then we shifted a bit more to sufficiency, focusing on, reach, for example, right? The more customers we reach, the more commercial outcome we can drive for the business. But I'm starting to see that pendulum swing a bit, more towards the middle, focusing a bit more on effectiveness.
Yeah.
I think when you're talking brand specifically, I think it's relatively common knowledge that, brand work still drives commercial outcomes, right? Everyone's familiar with the 60-40 split.
Yeah.
Lots of industry data backing that up, right? I think the challenge is kind of seeing that come to life in real time, particularly when budget pressures are a thing, right? What happens? The business says, hey, we need to sell more. You're not going to push to spend on brand building, right? Because that takes time to see those sales as a result. So I think inherently it pushes us a bit more to performance, and then it's we can't do anything without the data and measurement in place to make those informed decisions. So I think it's about I think it's about trusting the bigger, the things we know that work strategically, but being agile enough to pivot when necessary. But I don't think it's about, sometimes we have to make hard decisions and pull back on brand to drive short-term sales, just, to get us through, the next few quarters, and then we can kind of repivot and understand, okay, we can't forget about brand. We know how important it is. I think particularly when it comes to Portal, I think it's a great piece of technology to show you direct impact, live impact across multiple retailers, across lots of channels. So we've always known brand works, but now we can actually see it, right? We can see, is our media delivering, the outcomes we need it to? And if not, what are the changes we can make right now?
Yeah.
And we can't wait 2 years to see if our brand building worked or not, right? We think we think it's going to work, but we need to know now.
Yeah.
Particularly when I think you have changes on teams, right? People are ultimately care about delivering their goals and objectives in that year.
Yeah.
And I feel like a lot of the time we're just so focused on delivering that number, and then we're on to the next year, right? We don't always look back to see what worked, what didn't work.
Yeah.
And so I think there's lots of nuances, lots of things to kind of manage. But it definitely feels positive. I feel like we're moving towards a place where we've got, I guess, more clearer signals, more kind of middle funnel, like, are we driving intent ultimately?
Yep.
That shows us effectiveness. So we're not purely just focused on efficiency, because reach to some extent is purely efficiency, right?
Yeah.
I
think it's really interesting you mentioned that middle funnel, because I've always thought of it as you've previously been very awareness focused, and I think that's a direct result of what was possible in offsite CPG. And then there's no doubt that on-site retail media is incredibly performance focused, and arguably it's very difficult to convince somebody in that moment to change an opinion, but it's possible. The tech, the measurement, and the infrastructure is there. I've always felt there's this big gap between sort of offsite awareness and then before you get to that on-site. And it's really interesting to see that. Would you say that the understanding is changing internally, and would you direct any of that to how retail media is changing the conversation internally? Is that, we can be more performance focused now, and maybe, should we look at our offsite, because it can be more performance focused if we challenge it to be?
Yeah, I think, look, it's a big structural change.
Yeah.
The business has been running this way for a long time.
Yeah.
It's an industry change. I think we can definitely act more like a D2C. But that again brings some challenges. I think there's the measurement piece. It's like understanding, are we driving sales as a result of this upper funnel activity, yes or no? And then there's also the optimization piece, right? So, okay, well, if we're not, right, we are driving for reach. Maybe the business doesn't want to focus on conversion, right? Because as a CPG, we know a lot of our sales are in store, right? I still think that mid-funnel, intent piece is really important. For me, it's been eye-opening to understand, is our reach effective, right? Not only from a media perspective, right? Sometimes I see campaigns, I see great, huge amounts of volume. We're driving clicks, engagement metrics are great from a media perspective, lands on retailer site, with some of Portal's measurement, and it falls apart, right? Yeah. We just don't see the conversion I think we would expect. And I think that's where it's been interesting, right? Is understanding what's working, what's not. And sometimes we don't expect customers to convert. Like I said, a lot of our sales come from in-store. Some people aren't ready to buy. But what's interesting is being able to collect that data. Previously, we had no visibility, no way to segment audiences, to understand what was happening post-click, right? They click on our ads, that's kind of half the story, or a small piece of the story, and they move on. Even with retail media, I think that's definitely moved in the right direction. That's given us at least some insight to commercial outcomes off the back of, retail-specific data. But again, it's isolated, right? It's by channel, by retailer. It doesn't give you the full picture. I think I'm going to sell Portal a lot, yeah. I'm doing your job for you, Oli. I think the interesting thing about Portal is that it's agnostic, right?
Yeah.
Anything that has a click, basically, I can switch it on, right? And I can see in one dashboard all of my media, by channel, by creative type, if it's influencer versus performance focused, across all my retailers, and it helps. It's still last touch. I will caveat that.
Yep.
It's not a full, attributed window, but it at least gives me a bit more of a fuller picture to understand what's working, what's not. And even if I'm not driving sales, if I see high levels of intent, to me that points towards better effectiveness, and that's a much better indication that the media is working harder for me. And then we'll use our macro measurements to see if it ends up. Yeah, we saw this working online, and here's our MMMs to show.
Absolutely.
We did see the store in sales. At the moment, we're like, okay, we see the MMMs. It seems to be working, but we don't actually know how much of it is being driven up by media.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah,
I completely agree, and I'm not going to sit here and say that one size or one solution solves all in marketing measurement. It's about having a suite of technology that's right for your business. And I think that's really refreshing to hear that, you look at one set of data, i.e. the data that's coming through Portal on a granular basis, and say, okay, we can see green shoots of the changes that we made. Let's see how that had a knock-on effect on the MMM that we're looking at. Alternatively, you can look the other way and say, we've seen this creative resonating really well offsite. Let's take some of those learnings and then implement that in our on-site strategy, from whether it's search term buying or whether it's the actual creative that you run on the specific retail environment. So I think it's about taking learnings and moving them across platform and really building as much of a full funnel view as you can. So it's very refreshing to hear, for sure. And of course, I understand the frustrations of having a macro company view that has been potentially one way, reach impressions, and that's where we're going to grow our businesses, and then switching to be more performance focused. It's a big shift in a global directive. Do you find that there's a difference coming from the global directive versus what local teams would like? And how does that transpire in just sort of day-to-day conversations with those brand teams that you talk to?
Yeah, I think we're lucky. We have a great global team. We work very closely with them. We're also a lead market, so a lot of the, I guess, strategy, we have a seat at the table. I think I would say global do a really good job of giving us the ingredients and the framework on, the right direction to move in.
Yeah.
And then it's up to us to really, localize that, that approach and nuance it by market. And then just making sure we're speaking the same language, right? Are we using the same definitions? Or do we have the same goals in mind? I think just getting everyone on the same page from the start helps a lot. So yeah, I think there'll always be some tension. You throw regional into the mix too, right? Everyone has objectives to reach, and sometimes those opinions differ. But I think we're all moving towards the same goal. Everybody knows that, so it's just about making sure that everybody understands that, and the tactics we have in place to do that, all help us move a step forward, and then test and learn, right? I think there's always I've been in many situations where I think something's going to work a certain way, and then you test it and it just completely throws you off. So things like incrementality, A/B testing, the more of that you can do, the more it helps validate your thinking. So yeah,
and at a time where I'm privy to the news, and it's no secret that CPG brands have come out with sort of results from last year, and the belt tightening quite a lot. And naturally, in our roles, we know this firsthand from our careers, that marketing budget is one of the first things to get looked at. Do you find that there's still an appetite to measure in those times, or do you feel that has measurement become an ingrained part of the day-to-day with your brand teams, or is it actually something that falls by the wayside and we revert back to sort of doing what we know, reach and views?
I think it depends. I think we very much look back on historic performance to understand what's worked and what hasn't, particularly when budget pressures arise, to make more informed decisions, right? We need to get it right. I think inherently live measurement maybe falls by the wayside, because then the focus becomes hitting this number and making sure we're optimizing as much as possible. And then it depends what measurement tools and data you have access to. For example, before Portal was around, I didn't really know what my meter was doing on retail sites, right? So I'd have to wait at least three to 6 months to see econometrics sometimes. So sometimes by then it's too late, for those in your results. So yeah, I think it depends. I think all you can do is look at what data you have access to, try and make an informed decision. History, I think, gives you a pretty good perspective on what works and what doesn't. Look, I would say, culture moves fast, so trying to make sure you're kind of moving with the times and industry, but you can only kind of do what you know. What you don't know is not going to help you move any forward.
For sure, and I want to touch on that a little bit about culture moving fast, but also technology moving fast. I mean, the space that we work in, I was thinking about this on the way in this morning. It's I feel lucky that I work in such an emerging career and industry, in the sense that not only is, I feel, AI directly influencing our careers with ChatGPT launching now Ad, which was inevitable, and Google arguably is already in that space, but retail media in itself, right, is just moving at an unbelievable pace. I read the other week that Walmart is actually the first $1 billion retailer, not billion dollar, $1 trillion retailer, which is remarkable, and a lot of that's down to their ads business. So I want to look a little bit towards sort of the future. So I think there's no doubt that retail media is not going anywhere, and it's going to evolve. But what do you think the future of retail media looks like, in your opinion? And I will take that from a macro point of view, and then we'll kind of drill down a little bit more in some of the more kind of, I suppose, data-heavy parts of it. But what do you think it looks like in the future?
Are we talking through the lens of AI or just in general? In
general, like what does Leroy think that, skip forward 20 years, what does retail media look like as an offering for a CPG brand?
Okay, I'll start with the macro kind of big thinking view. I think from an AI perspective, and I'll focus more on measurement, right? Because I think that's where most of our conversation's been. I think we'll get to a stage where we have predictive measurement in place. We'll be able to forecast with accuracy, because we can forecast to some extent, right? But I think with high levels of accuracy. And then you think about things like proactive optimization, which sounds odd when you say it, because you think, how do you activate before you've actually spent any money, right? But I think we'll know very, very quickly, what's working, what's not. And then again, I think continuously optimizing as that goes. So I don't know if I'm going to have a job at that point, which is a bit scary to think about. But yeah, I think that at least at a macro level, I think we're going to move to a lot more. AI is democratizing everything, right? Planning, activation, to some extent, strategy, creative, right? I guess it's going to be how about we work with these new tools and data points to, I guess, try stand out, right? Because everyone's going to kind of be trying to do the same thing. I think from a retail perspective, I like to see more, I guess, consolidation to some extent.
I was going to ask about that. Yeah,
fragmentation is a challenge, right? Different retailers, different measurements, channel access. It's fragmented and isolated. So I think having some kind of consistent view, even from a measurement point of view, right? One dashboard that speaks the same language, that tells me, what's working, what's not, and is easy for me to action, is going to be game changing. And then I guess maybe in a perfect world, we start having data segments that are overlaid and layered, right? Different retailers being open to working. We're starting to see it move towards that. I don't know if retailers would be open to sharing, but I see Netflix is now partnering with Amazon, which is such an interesting perspective right now. You start sharing retail signals into Netflix, your targeting gets better, measurement becomes a thing. Now you can see, people are being exposed to my Netflix ads are actually converting on Amazon, and that's great. That's amazing. So I'd love to see more of that come together in a kind of unified view, because then you can just do so much more with that.
It's obviously for you and I as technologists, that's the pipe dream, right? That is the holy grail. But the problem I see is that there's protective elements on that data from one retailer that's competitive to another. Where we sit, it would be amazing to have the ability, that one singular view of that customer across different retail environments. But I'm skeptical whether we'll see that in that shape or form. Maybe in 20 years.
Maybe.
I don't know.
Anything's possible.
Future. But that would be the holy grail, right? Is to understand how customers are behaving and be able to move budgets around. But obviously there's a lot of politics that sit behind that. When there's non-competitive data sets, as you've just pointed out with Netflix and Amazon, super, super interesting opportunity, right? For you as an advertiser to be able to communicate with a highly targeted audience and then see them converting on a very, very penetrated retail app. I mean, that's a really strong movement in the right direction. So, from my side, I think measurement is absolutely needs to be at the forefront of the conversation, because at the moment, the conversations we're having when it comes to on-site is one retailer reporting impressions differently to another retailer, and this is sort of the struggles that we had when digital became programmatic. Publishers reporting in different ways, and there had to be a consolidation that was achieved through a governing body of the IAB. And I know that they're doing a lot of great work in that space of trying to actually bring similar sort of consolidation to retailers. It hasn't been as quickly taken up as perhaps some of us might think, and it's not just a market problem. It's retailers in the UK might all play ball, but then for you as a global player, retailers in Germany are not playing ball, and you've got that same challenge in that same market. So it's a global challenge to try and overcome. So definitely one to watch out for. So I want to move on to a little bit of a quick fire round, just some quick questions before we close things out. And again, it's about it's a bit of fun, actually. Media buzzwords. So a little bit like a program called Room 101, where you can sort of banish words. So if you had one media buzzword, and you've obviously worked at lots of different points in the industry, different sides of the coin, as we said. What media buzzword would you remove from our industry tomorrow, and why?
Well, that's the easy one. Like, jump straight to my head. Omni-channel.
Okay.
Yeah. I think it's not a bad word, right? I just think people misuse it all the time.
Yeah.
I think people say it implying that, we use multiple channels in our media. I think everyone does that, right?
Yeah.
I think it's, omni-channel means that you're using your, the channels have specific roles, right? And they need to be integrated. That's what omni-channel means. Not just, taking the same ad and sticking it on your channels and saying, we're omni-channel. Like,
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's definitely one I would.
Okay.
I don't know if I'd kill it, but hopefully I'd educate people on it.
Enforce it to be used.
Please
the
use
right
it
way.
properly, yeah.
Because to me, omnichannel means like if you've got an omnichannel identity solution, it means you're recognizing the same customer with confidence across different channels. And I think, to me, that's a really cool part. Or you're measuring multiple channels under one singular measurement framework. But I get that you're saying that there's some people would probably throw that out, and it is used a lot.
I'll throw a bonus one in there.
Okay, go on.
Data-driven.
Data-driven. Okay,
Yeah.
I'll make sure I don't say that anymore.
Looked at some insight and we made this data-driven decision. It massively overused. Again, I don't think it's a bad word, but I think people throw it around without the backing and actually using data to make those decisions or to automate things. So, yeah.
Okay, well, they're firmly put in the no shelf control room.
I can keep going. How much? I'll stop there. I'll keep it PG.
Okay, and then I quite like this question. I think you mentioned that you did too. But one piece of advice for an ambitious digital marketer that's working inside a CPG organization today, what piece of advice would you give them to help them navigate what's coming?
I think I would say, maybe this is the typical answer, but I think test and learn, right? Don't be afraid to test and keep testing. Things are changing so fast. It doesn't always have to be massive, big tests. Some small kind of, like I said, quick and dirty tests can tell you so much. And also don't be afraid of failing, right? Like we had a conversation not so long ago, right? Like where we both sat down and said, I don't know if this is actually going to work, but we're going to give it a go, because I think the flip side of that is it's going to teach us so much. Not knowing what doesn't work is also, as valuable as knowing what does, right? So yeah, I would say that. I think what I've seen in the industry is, I think that people that are much more open to that and agile to taking that approach just learn and grow so much faster. Things are moving so quickly. I think if you just assume things are going to keep moving in the same direction and base everything on history, you probably you're going to fall behind very quickly.
No, I appreciate that, and you practice what you preach, which is really how our whole relationship started, is starting to look and test and learn a platform that we were building, and that's where we sit here today in this position. So, Leroy, I want to thank you for your time, your knowledge and your insights, and hearing how you are approaching measurement at Kenvue. Accountability and optimization inside this environment is really valuable for anyone that's listening and working in performance media today. So thank you again for taking the time. For the listeners, that's today's episode, and we'll see you in the next episode of No Shelf Control.